Remember when Olivier Ryu went viral for literally just standing next to other basketball players? It wasn't for a dunk, a crossover, or a game winner. It was simply because he looked like a giant out of a movie playing against children. At just 12 years old, Ryu was already 6'10", and by 15 he was 7'5", which made him the tallest teenager in the world, and even won himself a Guinness World Record. And now at 19, he stands at a jaw-dropping 7'9" and is the tallest active basketball player in the world. But here's the craziest part. Despite being the most physically unique prospect on the planet, Ryu still isn't on any scout's NBA radar. This past season, he redshirted on the bench and watched his team win the national championship, cutting down the nets without even needing a ladder. And that's what makes his story so fascinating, because while every kid dreams of growing taller to gain an edge in basketball, what happens when you grow too tall? When the body that's supposed to make you unstoppable becomes the thing you have to learn how to control. Olivier Ryu's story isn't over yet. He's got time, he's got size, and he's got something you can't teach: persistence. And while his road to the NBA might not look like anyone else's, that doesn't mean he won't find a way there. This is the story of the basketball prodigy who's physically too tall for the game he loves. A kid whose body made him a phenomenon and might also be his greatest challenge. So let's rewind, back to where it all started. Before he became a viral sensation, Ryu was just a kid from Montreal, but one with a body that defied belief. His dad is 6'8", his mom is 6'2", and his older brother is also 6'8". So yeah, tall genes run deep in the family. But even by those standards, Olivier's growth was on another level. He was already taller than most adults by the time he turned 10. And by age 12, his 6'10" frame already towered him over all of his teammates and coaches. The first videos of him hit the internet like a glitch in reality. You'd see this massive kid playing youth basketball, dunking without jumping, barely needing to extend his arms to block shots, and your brain just can't process it. He wasn't just tall, he looked like a pro dropped into a middle school league. And before long, the internet took notice. Clips of Olivier started popping up everywhere. Ball is Life, Overtime, Slam. Fans couldn't believe what they were watching. Comment sections filled with people saying things like, "There's no way this kid is in middle school," and "How do you even defend that?" Every new photo, every new clip went viral. He became the internet's favorite curiosity, the kid who looked like an NBA center before he even hit high school. But what made Olivier different was that behind all the viral fame, he actually loved the game. He wasn't some novelty act getting dragged onto a court for clicks. He wanted to hoop. He worked on his touch, his post moves, his footwork. He studied players like Yao Ming, Boban Marjanovic, and even Nikola Jokic, trying to understand how to use his size the right way. His freakiest size eventually caught the attention of IMG Academy, which, as many of you know, is the most prestigious high school athletic program in the country. For the first time, Ryu wasn't the only big player on the floor. He was surrounded by elite talent, future Division I stars, lottery picks, and players who'd been training under the best coaches in the country. And yet, even at IMG, a school that's seen freak athletes come and go, Olivier stood out, literally and figuratively. He was the biggest player ever to come through their program. Every time he stepped onto the court, heads turned. Every photo with teammates went viral. But now the attention wasn't just about how tall he was, it was about what he might become. Because if Olivier could figure out how to move like a basketball player at his size, the ceiling was limitless. Imagine a 7'9" center who could actually run the floor, who could stay healthy, who could learn how to use that reach and length with timing instead of just height. That's the version of Olivier Ryu that scouts dreamed about. And for a while, that dream didn't feel impossible. He was getting stronger, more coordinated, and more confident. He wasn't dominating games the way he did in middle school, but he was developing, quietly, patiently, the way real players do when the cameras stop rolling. Because here's the truth. When you're 7'9" at 18, you're not just learning basketball, you're learning your own body, and that takes time. By the time Olivier arrived at IMG Academy, the world had already made up its mind about him. To most people online, he wasn't just a player, he was a spectacle. The 7'9" kid from Canada who looked like a cheat code in real life. Photos of him standing next to normal-sized teenagers didn't even look real. He went viral again during the McDonald's All-American festivities, not for a dunk or a block, but just by existing. And that's where the hype started to get tricky, because while the internet saw a once-in-a-lifetime giant destined for the NBA, coaches and scouts saw a project. A kid with incredible physical gifts, but a long way to go before those gifts could turn into production. At IMG, that meant starting from the ground up. Literally, he had to learn how to move efficiently, how to protect his joints, how to keep his balance in traffic. Every drill was about control. Every session was about repetition. It wasn't about highlight reels anymore. It was about building habits. And to his credit, Olivier bought in. He wasn't there to be famous. He was there to get better. He spent extra time after practice working on his conditioning, learning how to slide on defense, how to use his length without fouling. Teammates said he never complained, even when every step took more effort than it would for a normal player. But the internet doesn't care about slow progress, it cares about moments, and the viral clips didn't stop. Every time Olivier checked into a game, social media flooded with reactions. People joked about how he could dunk without jumping, how he could just reach up and block shots with his fingertips, and while it was funny at first, it also created an impossible standard. Because when the world sees you as a walking headline, it's easy to forget that you're still learning, that you're still a teenager trying to master your body while millions of people are watching every move. That's the paradox of Olivier Rioux. The hype made him famous, but it also made development harder. Every time he stepped onto the court, he wasn't just playing basketball, he was performing under the weight of everyone's expectations. But through it all, Olivier kept improving. His coordination sharpened, his confidence grew. He started to understand his advantages, how to seal defenders without moving an inch, how to use timing instead of speed, how to make himself valuable even in limited minutes. And soon enough, that steady growth led him to the next chapter of his journey, college basketball. Because in 2024, the Florida Gators called his name. A powerhouse program with elite coaching, national spotlight, and the kind of resources that could finally help him unlock his potential. When Olivier committed, the internet exploded again. Fans joked about how Florida wouldn't need a rim protector, they already had a human skyscraper. And for the first time, it felt like the hype had met opportunity. He joined a roster loaded with talent. And while he didn't play a minute that year, the experience was priceless. Olivier redshirted his freshman season, learning from the sideline as Florida went on a historic run to win the national championship. He was there for every huddle, every film session, every practice rep. And when the Gators finally cut down the nets, Olivier didn't need a ladder. He just reached up and grabbed his piece. It was symbolic. Because while the world was laughing at the viral pictures, Olivier was quietly doing what every real player has to do: wait his turn. As Olivier entered his senior year at IMG, reality started to set in. This season feels different. For the first time in his college career, Olivier Rioux isn't just on the roster, he's in the rotation. After redshirting his freshman year and watching Florida win the national championship from the sidelines, he's finally stepping onto the floor, ready to show that his story is about more than size. But let's be honest, the challenge in front of him is enormous, literally and figuratively, because when you're 7'9", every movement is a balancing act. Every sprint, every pivot, every jump takes more energy than it would for anyone else. His knees, hips, and feet all carry pressure that most athletes can't even imagine. Every minute he plays is a small victory over biology itself. And that's what makes this next chapter so compelling. He's not chasing highlights, he's chasing growth. Olivier's been working quietly behind the scenes for years now, focusing on agility, endurance, and footwork. Florida's coaching staff built a custom training program just for him, less about speed, more about stability. They want him to move efficiently, protect his joints, and maximize his unique size without breaking down. And early reports out of Gainesville say it's working. He's stronger, more fluid, more confident. He's still a long way from being a full-time contributor, but when he checks into games, you can see flashes. A soft hook shot here, a deflection there, a rebound pulled down without even leaving the floor. It's not about domination anymore, it's about progress. And that's the part most people miss. When you're this tall, development doesn't happen in leaps, it happens in inches. Each improvement in coordination or conditioning is a breakthrough. What's also changed is Olivier's mindset. After spending a year watching from the bench, he's learned patience. He's learned how to be a teammate. He's learned that there's more to basketball than just being tall. It's about timing, feel, and discipline. He's embraced the process, and that might be the most dangerous thing about him now, because a player with his frame and that kind of humility is someone you don't count out. Florida's staff believes his best basketball is still years away. They know he's never gonna run like a guard or jump like a forward, but they also know there are things no one else in the sport can do. No player in college basketball alters shots the way he does. No one changes spacing or forces adjustments before even touching the ball. He might not light up the box score yet, but his presence alone changes games. And this year is where that presence starts to mean something. Because for the first time, Olivier Rioux isn't just a viral moment. He's a real player, fighting for real minutes in real competition. And if he keeps improving the way he has, the conversation around him could shift again, from curiosity to contributor. Right now, Olivier Rioux is still in Gainesville, still grinding, still learning, still trying to figure out how to make a 7'9" frame work in a 6'5" game. He's not a headline anymore. He's not trending on social media every week, but behind the scenes, the work hasn't stopped, and neither has the belief that his story is still being written. At his size, every day is a balancing act, literally. He has to manage how much he runs, how much he lands, how long he practices, because when you're that tall and that heavy, every step is physics and pain management at once. But that doesn't mean he's fragile. If anything, Olivier is stronger than ever. He's listed at well over 300 pounds now, and when he plants his feet in the paint, he's immovable. You're not moving him off his spot. You're not backing him down. You're not dunking over him. He might not jump high, but he doesn't have to. He barely needs to leave the floor to dunk, and his wingspan swallows shots that look wide open until he lifts an arm. His hands are soft, his touch around the rim is smooth. He catches the ball clean, finishes through contact, and controls the boards simply by existing near them. For Florida, that's gold, because even in limited minutes, Olivier forces the game to slow down. He changes spacing, he alters shots, he bends the floor just by standing there. The Gators staff sees the long game. They're not trying to rush him into being something he's not. They're letting him develop like a classic big, through strength, positioning, and polish. And that's where the Zach Edey comparison starts to make sense. When Edey arrived at Purdue, he wasn't projected to dominate college basketball either. He was slow, raw, and adjusting to his own size. But over time, he learned how to weaponize it, using fundamentals, timing, and conditioning to turn himself into one of the most unstoppable players in the country. Olivier's on a similar path. If he stays patient, stays healthy, and keeps refining his craft, he could absolutely carve out that same kind of college career. One defined not by flash, but by force, because Olivier Rioux has size we've never seen before. Not just tall, unprecedented. He's the kind of player who could control the paint on both ends of the court simply by existing. He doesn't need to be fast, he just needs to be efficient. He doesn't need to stretch the floor, he just needs to own it. Best case scenario, he follows the Zach Edey blueprint to perfection. He spends 3 or 4 years at Florida, builds his conditioning and coordination, learns to dominate in the post, and becomes a college basketball nightmare. Imagine an SEC tournament game where teams are throwing everything they have at a 7'9" anchor who blocks shots, grabs 10 rebounds a night, and finishes everything inside 6 feet. If he hits that version of himself, he'll be impossible to ignore. Maybe not an NBA lottery pick, but definitely a star. The kind of player who defines an era of college basketball and shows that too tall might not exist after all. Of course, that's the best case version. The realistic one, Olivier keeps developing slowly, maybe never becomes a full-time starter, but still uses his presence to make an impact. A fan favorite, a locker room leader, and a symbol of perseverance. Either way, his journey still matters, because every year, every step, every game he plays is something we've never seen before. A 7'9" athlete competing at the highest level of college basketball. And that's not a gimmick, that's history in motion. So here's the question everyone keeps asking. Is Olivier Ryu too tall for the NBA, or are we just too quick to measure success by whether someone makes it to the league? Because if we're being honest, Olivier's story isn't one of failure, it's one of resilience. He's defied biology, defied expectations, and kept going in a body that's both a gift and a challenge. Most players dream of being tall enough to reach the rim. Olivier's had to learn how to live that tall every single day. The travel, the shoes, the strain, the endless media curiosity, it's exhausting. But through it all, he's kept smiling, kept working, and kept believing that his story isn't finished. He may never become an NBA star, he may never move like Wembanyama or shoot like Jokic, but he's carved his own lane in basketball history, one defined not by stats, but by scale. Because in a sport obsessed with perfect measurements, Olivier Ryu is a living reminder that sometimes you can have too much of what everyone else wants. Too much height, too much attention, too much expectation. And maybe that's okay. Because even if his story doesn't end under NBA lights, it's still one of the most remarkable basketball journeys ever told. The tale of a kid who literally outgrew the game. So what do you think? Can Olivier Ryu ever make the NBA, or has his own height become his biggest opponent? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, where basketball meets the human story behind the headlines. Because whether he ever makes it or not, Olivier Ryu will always be remembered as the basketball prodigy who was physically too tall for the NBA. We'll see you in the next one.